Good afternoon, everyone. This is Allen Murabayashi speaking to you from PhotoShelter World Headquarters here in New York City. Normally, I have the lovely Sarah Jacobs today. Sarah's not in the office today. We have a special guest joining us for the commentary today, and it's none other than Jeff Bezos from Amazon.com. Oh, no, it's PhotoShelter CEO Andrew Fingerman. Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, Alan, how are you? Thanks for having me. Thanks for the Bezos reference.
Yeah, I was going to start with the Andre Agassi reference, who you're also mistaken for.
I would love to have what both of those guys have, both in looks and in whatever they've got in the bank.
One day that'll happen. We decided last week that we would always start with some hard news, and so this week is no different. And one of the things that I love about social media is you learn stuff, or you run into stuff that you would just not otherwise come into contact with, because maybe it's something regional or it's just not in your periphery, and you just miss it. One of the guys that I follow on Facebook, and you know him as well, Scott Strzeanti, who's a longtime staff photographer for the Chicago Tribune, shot this prep basketball game in which the son of former NBA player Rick Brunson made a gesture that we refer to as flipping the bird. I think is that what the kids are calling it nowadays?
I have no idea what the kids are calling it these days, but it looked like a bird to me.
It looked like a bird. So let's show you the photo here. And so here's the situation. You'll look at this photo. It's this kid flipping the bird. And the caption that accompanied, Scott did not take this photo. This photo was published by another news organization, by another photographer, who captioned the photo with something like, Stevenson High School player,
I think
Jalen Brunson,
making a gesture to the fans.
Yeah, makes a gesture to the fans. So you look at this photo and you say, oh my God, this high school kid is flipping the bird to the fans. Like, where's the sportsmanship? He was, I think he was initially banned from playing the next game because of the gesture, because of this photo.
And it really exploded in social media.
Yeah, and so Scott, to his credit, I believe, he showed his entire take of this photo. So Scott was motoring the same scene at 10 frames per second. And I want to show you this video because this came to light, which is this is how fast it occurred in real time. So we'll just kind of play this, and I know it's impossible to see, but he pulls up for a jumper. He kind of jukes his defender. He makes this three. He throws his hands up, and it's literally, they calculated 1/5 of a second. So he throws two hands up in jubilation, and as they're coming down, it looks like he flips the bird, but then it's like quickly retracted. So the issue wasn't whether he flipped the bird. He flipped the bird.
Yeah, I think, we could all kind of speculate, but to me it looked like he was in the process of flipping the bird, realized what he was doing, maybe, regrouped, got his conscience, got himself sorted out, and quickly closed his hands back up.
And remember, this is a high school kid in the heat of the moment in some tournament in 1/5 of a second. If that truly went through his head, and we can only speculate, like, good for him.
Yeah,
for having the sense to do that. Now, so the issue wasn't that he flipped the bird. Everyone says, okay, we got it on film. He's clearly extending the finger. The issue is that the caption said he was doing it to the crowd, when clearly, unless you saw the still, and then you watched a video because you knew it was coming, there's no way you would see that.
Yeah, exactly. And who knows who it was intended for or what, and even if he had the presence of mind for it to be intended for anyone.
I think it's the kind of thing that like, it's like, yeah, I'm a badass, and then you flip the bird just because that's what kids do. And it's unfortunate that a high school kid gets caught by a photographer on a 10 frame per second motor drive and becomes national news because of social media as well.
Yeah, and now there's this cloud hanging over the kid's head, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just a weird, we talk about photography on the show, but we also talk about kind of the social impact of photography on the show, and I think this is just one of these. We have a lot of these topics this week, in fact. So that's all I have to say about that. I just thought it was sort of unfortunate that it happened to this kid. I think he's never been in any trouble. He's never gotten any technicals. I think he's probably a really good kid, and unfortunately, a miscaptioned blew up on the internet.
Yeah, and I have to say the other thing is, kudos to Scott for kind of standing up on the kid's behalf and really kind of pulling out his full edit and showing the whole shoot, what the sort of split-second moment really looked like.
Yeah, and my only complaint about Scott is that he has a tendency in his Instagram feed to like upload like 5 images at a time. And I've talked to him about this, and he knows it, but he keeps doing it. They're great photos, Scott. Just slow down. You got to leak them out 1 an hour. I don't want to see 5 of your photos in a row. Okay, moving on. This is something that I saw start to happen maybe a year and a half ago, which is I think I first saw it with the New York Times. Using hashtags on Twitter or Instagram as a submission mechanism for photos to these companies. So, for example, when there's a big storm in New York City or a hurricane or whatever, the New York Times will say, "Send us your photos by hashtagging NY storm photos" or something like that. And I've seen more and more companies. So here's a company called Frank and Oak that said, "Tag it with hashtag my workshop to be entered into this thing." Now, the weird thing about this is that this very generic hashtag, which anybody who doesn't even know Frank and Oak could hashtag it because they're in their workshop. Now this becomes subject to their terms and conditions.
Right.
Which is inevitably a rights grab.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to the average consumer on trying to suss out whose terms and conditions is my photo applying to now. I have to worry about, does Instagram own my photos and Facebook own my photos, and now does Frank and Oak own my photos? I don't think there's any terms and conditions listed at the bottom of this email for Frank and Oak's contest.
No, I don't think so either.
Peter Krogh often says, you have to understand it's not Facebook that's the product, you're the product. You and your content in this case are the product.
Yeah. And my opposition to this type of submission mechanism, first of all, it's such a loose opt-in. And second of all, you can't use a generic term as your submission hashtag. If the hashtag was Frank and Oak Workshop, then at least it's branded. It's a brand term. It's no longer this generic thing, because how often are the terms Frank and Oak going to come up in a hashtag when it's not actually related to Frank and Oak?
Right, right. So they're effectively claiming ownership. If Joe McNally is Instagramming my workshop,
yeah,
danger.
Silly.
The Today Show on NBC is a major user of this as a submission mechanism. They do something in the morning called the Today Sunrise. So if you hashtag Today Sunrise, you can get your photo of the sunrise on the Today Show. And they've been doing this since they changed over their set. They brought Carson Daly on board.
Carson Daly.
With what is it? Probably 4 months now. They must have the largest collection of sunrise photos in the world. It's pretty interesting. It might be time to change it up too.
I think that's probably a good way to just photobomb them by putting in not sunrise photos.
Right.
Well, here's an example of a branded campaign. Now, the only reason why I'm bringing this up is I was walking in New York City on Houston Street. Calvin Klein has had a huge billboard there for as long as I can remember, and I've been in the city for 15 years. And usually it's someone in their underwear, whether it's a man or a woman. And this is the one. This is hashtag MyCalvins. Tag a photo of you and your Calvins for a chance to be featured in the My Calvins gallery, which is what we're looking at right now. Now, remember that
if you scroll down a little, I think mine's on this page.
Oh, your photo, yeah, I think I saw you in there somewhere. I think you cut your face out smartly. Oh, Kendall Jenner is in there. Remember Marky Mark when he did those Calvin Klein ads?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, to me, this is a perfect example of people. First of all, it's a branded hashtag, so that's cool. Second of all, this is exactly the kind of thing where these guys are willing, whether they know it or not, they're willing to give up their photo rights in order to get literally the exposure with no pants on, right?
Yeah.
In hopes that they'll be seen and someone says, oh, I want that guy to be the next Calvin Klein model.
I mean, and this campaign itself is very clever because it smack dab right in the middle plays to the vanity of the selfie generation.
Oh, totally. I mean, brilliant. This is probably the most brilliant execution of, knowing who your target market is, executing a hashtag that even if you don't know what it is, you kind of have that name recognition immediately. Like my Calvins, like people know it,
Yeah. So seriously, where's yours?
Again, I crop my head out. But yeah, I don't want to see this in your history, when I go through your work computer there, Andrew.
Right. Hey, there's Vanessa Hudgens.
Yeah, I know. They're like making all the celebrities big, and I think that's again like smart on their part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an iPhone guy. Which you're an iPhone guy too, aren't you?
Yeah, and my current contract is up in 15 days.
Oh my
gosh!
gosh!
I can finally get the 5.
Well, the 6 is supposed to come out in September, they say.
That's a long wait.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still with the 4S, so.
Oh.
I'm slow.
Well, the cameras on the iPhones consistently get very good ratings, and particularly on the 5S has a magnificent camera, although it's only 8 megapixels. HTC, which is a great smartphone manufacturer, released their new HTC One, so it's like a machined aluminum back. It's it's all curved. It's supposed to be gorgeous, but insofar as photography is concerned, they have 2 lenses on this thing, and it's part of their goal to start introducing informational photography or computational photography. So you remember our friends over at Lytro, this camera that allowed you to focus after the fact, because it captured all this data and then it could reprocess the data. So HTC, this is their foray into it, and the second lens is used to calculate distances rather than just taking in light. And so the example here is this, for example, this parallax effect that you're seeing, where it's kind of moving the photo, and you can focus in and out, etc. But from some of the tests that I've been seeing, it's not quite ready for prime time yet. As was Lytro, like not quite ready for prime time. Apparently, the edges of stuff get really funky looking and fake. So I think it's great that they're making this a production feature, because I think they'll learn a lot. But if you're buying the HTC One specifically for this computational photography aspect, that probably shouldn't be the main reason that you're upgrading to this phone.
Yeah. It's interesting with all the phones that are really going after market share against the iPhone, and against in the Android space, and trying to differentiate themselves with really intense photography capabilities. I'd love to see what our community of pro photographers can do with those phone cameras, because I do think that at least among the the professional photographers that I interact with, the iPhone seems to be incredibly prevalent. But these phones that claim greater capabilities, like what we should do is one day we should kind of like do a big test. Send a bunch of our folks out with the HTC, see what they can do with it. That would be pretty cool.
Well, my contention has always been that the sensors nowadays are so good that unless you're really in low light, you're not really going to be able to tell that much. And Jim Richardson, friend of PhotoShelter, did that whole kind of Scottish trip with the iPhone, and that went viral too. That was one of his big viral things, and he picked up a ton of Instagram followers as a result of that. But it's like if you're a good photographer, it kind of doesn't matter what you're using.
Yeah, yeah.
And Andrew, you're pretty good. You're a pretty good Instagram photographer yourself.
I like that label. You're an Instagram photographer.
Yeah, photographers love it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I can't lie and say that I don't get a little emotional tweak when photographers that I respect will throw me a like on Facebook. I mean on Instagram.
On Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, just throwing you a bone, dude. They're hoping for like a free year of PhotoShelter or something.
I try and make at least every. I limit the photos of my kids to like 1 in every 5, maybe 1 in every 3.
Yeah. Good thing you don't have like a cute dog too. That would just blow up the internet.
That's true.
I've been a huge proponent. Well, not proponent. I've been a huge detractor of this strategy by Hasselblad to dress up Sony cameras. Literally, they take Sony cameras, they put on a piece of like carbon fiber or wood to the handle, and then they sell them for like 4 times the amount that the Sony camera. It's the exact same sensor, it's the exact same guts. It just looks different. And I said, this is a dumb strategy on their part. This is like, who's going to pay that? And then we see this, which is the world goes crazy. 2 Hasselblad Lunars, which are the Sony NEX7s, sold for $27,000 each.
It's ridiculous. I mean, there's a market for everything, and testing price against who's out there and willing to pay for this.
I guess it's brilliant, but I mean, okay, so the thing sold for $27,000, but there's still development costs associated with this.
Yeah.
So if they only
how many
sell
did they
100
need to
units,
sell? It's hard to comment on this until I'm making Jeff Bezos and Andre Agassi money.
Because then there just won't be enough for you to buy. You'll have to get one of these.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that instead that you might want something that actually had done something. So this is the Hasselblad camera that they actually used on the moon, which sold for $910,000. Now that, if I had Jeff Bezos' money, man, I would get this.
Yeah. Very cool memorabilia effect.
Back in the day.
And that's one of a kind.
That's one of a kind, yeah. Back in the day, there was a few days, literally a few days, where this company said, we're auctioning a bunch of Michael Jackson stuff. This was before he passed away. And one of the things that was up for auction was the glove. And I registered to bid on the glove because I was like, man, this is like, well, it wasn't one of a kind because he had a whole trunk load of these things. But it's one of a kind to Michael Jackson, the artist.
You needed a glove to go with your scarves.
I just thought I would, yeah, exactly. I thought if I got like a hand mannequin and I put that glove on it and then I put it in an acrylic like cube case, like I could have parties, like all these girls would come over and be like, yeah, the glove, be like kind of my pickup line. Look at the glove.
So what did it go for?
Well, they pulled the auction because Michael complained like, this is not for sale. And unfortunately, they pulled the auction. But I think after he passed away, then obviously the value skyrocketed. And then it was out of reach. Because I think initially, before he passed away, it was like $2,000, you can get one of 500 gloves. And then it was like, whatever. And it wasn't the white glove, man. It was like a green glove or something.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I think you brought this one up, which is also fascinating, about a course at USC about Google Glass journalism.
Yeah, this was I saw this on Mashable yesterday morning, and it's really interesting. The class itself may even be a little bit ahead of its time, and I think that's what they're trying to do. The point is that they say the professor says that journalism has historically followed technology, and maybe they can get out ahead a little bit, and so the class is focused on glass journalism, and it's there's 2 different perspectives here. There's the capture and reporting using glass, but then there's also the production and packaging of stories for glass, and they're actually going to be writing apps in the class, which I think is really cool.
That's cool. You know, I always have an opinion that is the opinion about the idea, and then the opinion that's more about the practicality of the idea.
Right.
And my issue with this thing is, you know, we got a pair of Google Glasses for the office, and they're really not that easy to use.
Yeah, the practicality point is dead on.
Okay, so let me try to demonstrate for you guys on internet land. Like, let's say these are Google Glasses. You have to tap here to activate it, and then you go, okay, glass, take a photo. And then we tried to video conference because apparently you can connect the Google Glass with the Google Hangouts, and it took like half an hour before we could figure it out. And then the unit would shut off because it auto shuts off because the battery is so small. And then the other issue is, like, you know, when someone puts a GoPro on their helmet and they're walking around, it's not unless they're jumping off of a building.
Yeah, it's pretty dizzying.
Yeah, it's not fun to watch.
Yeah, I think the practicality comment you just made, it's practical if your goal is to be one of those people seen wearing Google Glass. And that's kind of where it ends at this point.
Yeah, it's not a cool look. Well, the other thing is, like, there's nothing specific about Google Glass that makes this class have to be about Google Glass, because GoPro obviously has a camera, Sony has an adventure camera, Panasonic has an adventure camera. All of these things can mount to a helmet or to your face in some form or fashion. So to me, it's sort of like, I understand the intent, which is, will wearable devices change the way that we do the reporting? I think it's sort of gimmicky to use Google Glass, particularly because they said, you know, he wants up to 12 students, but they only have 5 pairs of glasses.
Right.
Like, well, how are you going to write an app when you don't even have access to the thing?
It's interesting. I think, you know, there's probably a theoretical component too, right, where they're exploring boundaries and, you know, who is a journalist? Like, is this an extension of the, you know, citizen journalism type thing we're seeing with mobile devices? And I would say on the storytelling piece, it's like, we're only just now getting good at packaging content for phones, even. So I'm intrigued to see, like, what does responsive for glass actually look like? You know, so if there's a group of people that are standing around thinking about that, awesome. I can't wait to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I certainly think, I hope there is some output out of this that gets publicized, because I'd love to see it either succeed or fail, or at least we come away with some learnings about it.
Yeah.
Talking about failing, something near and dear to your heart, Taco Bell.
Yeah, I caught this one yesterday morning, and it was really interesting. They, you know, Instagram recently stopped and started again doing these sponsored ads, photos that appear in your feed, whether you'd like it there or not. And what's intriguing about this is Taco Bell yesterday launched breakfast at Taco Bell. And I won't comment on whether or not I eat Taco Bell when I'm sober. But what I will comment on is, what's interesting is that they, you know, whoever their marketing firm is, they went after this, like, you know, Instagram look, right? Like, show us the authenticity. Yeah. We'd like to see, like, youth in, you know, authentic moments, wearing their authentic hipster clothes, in their, you know, authentic wafy bodies. You know, having super fun. You know, is one person actually tossing breakfast into another person's mouth?
It looks like a Cheeto ball to me. I don't know what that has to do with Taco Bell.
You know, I think they're drinking Pepsi at breakfast, so, you know, something to be said about that. But the important thing here is you know, did Taco Bell achieve its goal? And you know, we're looking on the screen here. It has, you know, 9,211 likes. I'm sure that skyrocketed to over 30,000 yesterday. Mm-hmm. So people must like it, but when you go a little bit deeper and you look into the comments, I would say like 1 in every 3 or 4 comments was about 2 things. One, it was people rejecting the Instagram ads in their feed. Once again, knowing that you're the product is important here. But the other thing is people were saying really nasty things about what happens when you have Taco Bell in your system, and, you know, the gastrointestinal effects of Taco Bell, and, you know, using the little you know, the poop favicon image and stuff like that. So you know, there was, and this is, you know, this has happened time and time again when companies promote themselves in social media. You know, you have to understand and be able to predict what the outcome is going to be in you know, in the universe that you're putting the images into.
And hey, I don't want to be political on the show, but guys, Taco Bell it's not healthy. Even if you like it, don't eat it. Eat real food. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
there
enough
were
meat
actually a
culture.
lot of the comments were about GMOs, and if you want GMO infused veggies and whatever the meat is, go for
Yeah,
it.
whatever the
Yeah.
meat is. But to your point, this is not the first time that they've done uh, sponsored posts. So here's one for Charity Water,
Right.
and that has 700,000 likes. And I mean, it's difficult for people to accept what is essentially a paradigm change, which was Instagram was free, there were no ads in it, and then of course because it was purchased by Facebook, it has to be a viable business because they paid $1 billion for it, or
Right.
slightly under $1 billion for it.
And I don't take issue with that. If you want to, if you're providing me what still feels to me like a free service, and I'm enjoying it, and it gives me a chance to see your photos and Scott Trozante's photos, great. If you want to feed me an ad from time to time, great, go for
Yeah, a Taco Bell ad.
it.
Our last sort of social media photography commentary is about how a mom's experiment in social media shaming backfired. And so I guess the deal was, what was the deal here?
Yeah, so this was a mom that I think her daughter was begging her to have a Facebook account. I think she was maybe 12 years old, and the mother didn't want her to have an Instagram or a Facebook account because of the very likely situation where you put a photo of yourself. You're a young teenage girl. You put a photo of yourself and your friends up there, and I'd like to show you how far and fast this photo can fly around the internet. So the mom posted the photo with, almost like, people interpret this as shaming the daughter, but
Right.
she said, mom is trying to show me how many people can see a picture once it's on the internet. And you know what? I think this is a very good lesson I'm a parent. I have an 8-year-old daughter. She's asking me for an Instagram account. She's asking me to post, fashion show videos that we film of her. She's saying, put it on YouTube so I can get followers. That's just blowing my mind and scaring the hell out of me.
Wait, does she have a phone at 8?
She has an iPad mini.
Ah,
We won't get into that. It was a gift from the grandparents. They didn't ask us if it was okay.
right.
But anyway, so this photo more than flew around the internet. Folks on 4chan, which is, would you call it a sort of meme and developer type community?
I would call it more of like a sewer of the internet, but yeah, sure. A lot of memes originate from 4chan.
Yeah, and so what they did is they took the photo, they wiped out the note from that the mom was having the daughter hold, and they put everything that you could possibly think of on that photo, and yeah, it flew around.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think I understand the mom's intent, but it's sort of opposite to use your child then to prove the point.
Yeah.
Why not just show an image that went viral?
Yeah, the good news is that when I want to teach my daughter this lesson, I can use this article instead of having to do this to her.
People are so mean on the internet anyway. It's just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and this did get really out of control.
But I think they had psychologists who weighed in on this tactic of shaming your kid, which never quite works. Probably just sort of builds resentment from your kid, which is not the right parenting strategy.
Yeah, one day she is going to get a Facebook account, and she'll probably post pictures of her mother on it.
Well, we haven't actually seen any great photography yet, so we thought we would shift gears a little bit and show you some stuff that came across our desktops or our phones. And this was on Fast Company. This photographer, Daniel Zevrev, got a hold of some of the last infrared film. So it's film that only captures wavelengths in the infrared range, which are not visible, so more in kind of the heat range, and kind of went to the Arctic and shot. And so there's no filter on this. It's just how the film records it, and it gives us this really eerie, kind of Alice in Wonderland-y look. And I kind of think, you know, for all of the advances that we have with digital, there's nothing in digital that captures this kind of stuff. You know, there have been some attempts to take off some of the filters that they put over the digital, but it just, you know, sensors aren't designed for this part of the spectrum. They're designed for visible light because that's the application. And it's just a little bit of a shame that, you know, when the film goes away, we lose this capability. But the photos are lovely, and if you go to our blog at blog.photoshelter.com, you can see some of these photos. So that was some nice stuff. I was at the NPPA short course. That's the News Photographers Association, and this was in Warwick, Rhode Island, at their annual Northern short course. And some of the stuff that they were showing, and it was in their News Photographer magazine, was a project that I was unaware of. It's called the Shriver Report, and it's Maria Shriver, former wife of Arnold Schwarzenegger and part of the Kennedy clan, in conjunction with NBC, where she's a news correspondent, threw together this initiative to kind of look at women and their roles and etc. And one of the things that they did is they hired some awesome photojournalists who also happen to be women. Melissa Farlow, Melissa Little, Barbara Rees, Callie Schell, Jan Sonnemer, and Amy Vitale. So a lot of people that we know through PhotoShelter. And you know, they sent them out to cover these certain areas on a specific day and came back with some really great images. And so to me, it was just a reminder that so much great photography exists and can pass you by without you even knowing it. And so thank God for the internet that it allows us to go back and see this stuff. And the other aspect of it is, because we did that post on 14 female photographers that you know you should know now. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of a liberal when it comes to these sociological issues, and you always got to fight for the minority, and in this case, women. They're underpaid for what they do generally. It's really hard to be a professional woman when kind of culturally you have the responsibility of raising the kids. You got to expose all of this stuff. There needs to be vehicles. You always have to be bringing this stuff up until one day they're not sort of marginalized anymore. They're not, you know, when they're paid the same wage, when they're given enough time for maternity leave, et cetera, then we can stop reporting on them as being women. Until then, I think this provides a valuable service.
Well, you know, I'm not sure you know how timely pulling this up is. Yesterday, social media exploded, and I apologize for bringing it back to social media, but apparently Gwyneth Paltrow made a comment about being a working mother and how much harder it is to be a working mother on a grueling 14-hour movie set than one of these women who has the luxury of showing up at an office and working 9 to 5 for the day. And then, you know, then you can go home and you know, be with your kids and do your thing. And it's so much harder to do what Gwyneth does. And obviously there's you know, some very emotional backlash to that. And you know, there's one particular letter that somebody wrote in response that was like, yep, you know, I thank my lucky stars that I don't have to show up on a grueling 14-hour movie set once a year to make millions of dollars, and you know, instead I can just take it easy and go home and you know, do my job, get through work, and then you know, plan everything out, and I get to be with my kids. And it's you know, so seeing the stories that photographers like this, you know, pulled out, I mean, it should really be put in front of Gwyneth's face, really, and you know, everybody else who's talking about this.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's a very vivid picture of you know, what a true day in the life really looks like.
You can't really take Gwyneth seriously. You know, she has. If you've ever visited her website Goop, then you kind of understand this fantasy world that she lives in, which is, you know, maybe it's kind of calculated on her part. She's not a dumb person, but she did grow up, you know, Hollywood royalty, and is maybe a little bit out of touch. I guess you saw 2 days ago where she announced on Goop.com that her and her husband, the lead singer of Coldplay, were a social uncoupling, I think was the term.
Yeah.
Something ridiculous. I had the good fortune, to have breakfast with Madeleine Albright today, who was the Secretary of State under Clinton. It was a fundraiser for one of my high school classmates who became the U.S. Senator from Hawaii. And one of the quotes that Madeleine Albright said at a different conference, not this one, is, let me pull this quote up because it's so great. "There is a special place in hell for women who don't support other women, who don't help other women." So, since you brought up Gwyneth, I just thought it was funny. You know, you got to stand up for your own minority. Not that women on a number basis they're not a minority, but the way that they're treated in our society and a lot of societies is less than how other people are treated. We got a little serious there.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's thanks to the photos. That's the discussion that you're supposed to have when you see these photos.
Exactly. Speaking of the Northern Short Course, they just released their NPPA Best of Photojournalism awards, and a lot of the same faces that we've seen in other photo contests, at least the Pictures of the Year International and World Press, etc. And John Tlumacki from the Boston Globe, who had this unbelievable coverage from the Boston Marathon bombing, was Photographer of the Year, and deservedly so. You know, I think that there's a certain tendency, because you see these images over and over again, you kind of get used to it. And in the same way that I remember seeing, war photos and being like, what's the big deal? They're there, they took a photo. But, I remember playing paintball one day. And remember, you're just out there with your friends playing a game of paintball. There's the chance of injury, the risk of injury is so low, and the chance of death is like nil. And yet it was terrifying.
Yeah, and imagine being asked to have the presence of mind to compose a photo in that moment.
Yeah, and he doesn't, it's not like for Tlumacki, he's not going into a war zone. He doesn't expect that shells are going to be going off, etc. He's just photographing a marathon. And at the finish line now, all of a sudden, a bomb goes off, there are body parts, there's blood, etc. And as you say, he has the presence of mind to pick up the camera and start seeing in the way that a great photographer sees.
Yeah. This photo in particular, it's very evocative to me of the Kent State photos from the 60s. Yeah.
Just fabulous stuff. So if you're not familiar with the NPPA, first of all, you should be familiar with them as an organization. And if you haven't seen the photos that won this year, I mean, just fantastic. Really, I hope people who aren't really into photojournalism can look at this stuff and get a real appreciation for how difficult this is, and get an appreciation for when we have conversations about truth and veracity in photojournalism, which we don't have the same conversations when we talk about landscape photos or editorial and commercial photography. Mm-hmm. But we have them in photojournalism because these photos inevitably end up being important to society and culture. And as a record of what happened on this terrible day, man, this guy was like out there and just kicking some major butt. So kudos to that guy. Our last topic for the day, we talked about film when we were talking about the loss of infrared film. And as many people know, Polaroid closed up shop many, many years ago. And one of the victims, if you will, of Polaroid closing shop was that we lost the 4-inch by 5-inch Polaroid that was available to us. But there's a initiative that's been going on for some time called New 55, and this is the attempt to create black and white 4x5 film, a Polaroid with a positive image and an actual negative from the same piece of film. And these guys have finally started a Kickstarter campaign so that they can bring this stuff to production. So they've been hand creating Polaroid film, like literally they bought pieces of film and clips, and they put their hands into a dark bag, and they made a few pieces, and they created some incredible photos out of this. And now they want to there is demand for this stuff, and so they're on a Kickstarter campaign to raise $400,000. I am proud to say that I gave $300 to this campaign because there's something about Polaroid that is just really awesome, and we see it with the Joe McNally photos that we supported. It's just cool. It's cool.
Yeah. I will say, so 2 weeks ago we were at the SPE convention in Baltimore. That's the Society for Photographic Education. And they bring together a number of educators, but also a whole bunch of photo students, current photo students. And there was a little trade show aspect to it as well. PhotoShelter had a table there. We were talking to people about websites and archiving their photos online. But the tables that got the most interest from the young people were the alternative sort of film types and printing capabilities, and that was really encouraging to see.
Yeah.
And I know that it kind of plays into like the uniqueness of the hipster generation and whatnot, but good. That's good. These are artists who are looking for unique ways to do their work, and it's really exciting. I think projects like this deserve support greater than $400,000, because if we're all just out there conforming to this single digital and even Instagram standard, we're going to lose that uniqueness and the excitement and the richness of some of these Polaroid technologies.
And you know what? In the history of the world, no one has ever not been impressed by a Polaroid image that starts to form before your eyes. Like, that is just cool, man.
Totally agree.
And in honor of that, I've had, look at this box to everyone out there. This is a box of Polaroid type, what type is this? Type 59. It's color 4x5 Polaroid that's been in my fridge. I have 2 boxes. It's been in my fridge literally for like 8 years. And part of the reason was I didn't want to use it up. And, I'm sure all the chemicals are all funky now, and the color won't be so great. But the color in Polaroid was never that great to begin with. It's just cool to have such a large Polaroid image. So I really hope that if you're into 4x5 photography, or if you're into Polaroid, that you go to that Kickstarter page and help them out. Hey, Andrew.
Hey.
That's the end of the show, man. Thanks for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. I was worried that my charisma would intimidate you and throw things off, but I think we have a good rapport here.
We do have a good rapport, as we do in real life, and I appreciate the fact that you got a nice haircut before you came in.
Yeah.
My mom always watches this stuff, and she'll have some comments about how we look, and it would just be bad if you weren't well shaven and had a haircut. That said, Sarah Jacobs will join us again next week. We love Sarah, but we hope that you come back again. Since you do just work downstairs, it's not a big deal for you to join us again.
I'm happy to guest host anytime.
And that is it. Hey, I forgot to tell y'all, but maybe you saw it in our little under our names there. #ILovePhoto, and you can follow Andrew or I with our Twitter handles, and of course @PhotoShelter is available to you as well. So for Andrew Fingerman, this is Allen Murabayashi. We'll see you next week for I Love Photography Live. Bye-bye.